Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to a series of videos in which I'm reading you a book. We are reading the Bible, specifically the New Testament, specifically the Gospel according to St. Mark. And we are up to chapter 8. So let's see what we see in chapter 8. We are dealing with a preacher and a wonder worker named Jesus, who's making his way through the Galilean countryside, drawing huge crowds, working miracles, and professing that he has a message for humanity. Mark, the author of the gospel, is being a little bit cherry on what that message is, but we're getting it in dribs and drabs. And we are now up to chapter 8. In those days, the multitude being very great, and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples unto him, and saith unto them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now been with me 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint by the way, for divers of them came from afar. And his disciples answered him, From whence can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness? And he asked them, How many loaves have ye? And they said, 7. And he commanded the people to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves, and gave thanks, and brake, and gave his disciples to set before them. And they did set them before the people. And they had a few small fishes, and he blessed, and commanded to set them also before them. So they did eat, and they were filled. And they took up the meat that was left, 7 baskets. And they that had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away. You hear an explicit echo of something that we've already seen. The feeding of the 5,000 we saw. Now it's 4,000 people. It's the same thing. It's the same scenario. A crowd has followed Jesus for days. They're out in the wilderness. There's nowhere for them to get food. He gives them food, and it is miraculously done, and they go away filled. And straightway he entered into a ship with his disciples, and came into the parts of Dalmanutha. And the Pharisees came forth, and began to question with him, seeing of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit, and saith, Why doth this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall be no sign be given unto this generation. And he left them, and entering into the ship again departed to the other side. So we're talking about the Sea of Galilee here. We're always talking about him getting a ship and going to the other side. Although it's a pretty weird thing for Jesus Christ, the Messiah, to say that unto this generation no signs will be given. That's kind of strange. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, neither had they in the ship with them more than 1 loaf. And he charged them, saying, Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, It is because we have no bread. And when Jesus knew it, he saith unto them, Why reason ye, because ye have no bread? Perceive ye not, neither understand? Have ye your heart not yet hardened? Have ye eyes, see ye not? And having ears, hear ye not? And do ye not remember? When I brake the 5 loaves among the 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up? And they say unto him, 12. And when the 7 among 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up? And they said, 7. And he saith unto them, How is it that ye do not understand? I have a very good answer to that question, because you're not telling them. You're not saying anything. What on earth what are we supposed to be doing here? Why is this character speaking in riddles? He's having his disciples do long division and algorithms. Why? Why is he doing this instead of simply saying what he means? Anyway, and he cometh to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out into of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. So you get a very good image here that this formerly blind man can't quite make out details. He can see sticks that look like trees. After that, he, that's Jesus, put his hands again upon his eyes and made him look up, and he was restored, and saw every man clearly. And he sent him away to his house, saying, Neither go into the town, nor tell it to any in the town. So once again, we have the theme here of Jesus not wanting people to know what he's doing. He takes this blind person out of town in order to heal him. How that would happen when crowds are pressing so tightly that, as we're told many times, in a rather homely detail in this chapter, he doesn't even have room to eat. How he could get off into the wilderness with a blind man when everyone knows they're going to get a show, I don't know. But it's just a little story. And Jesus went out and his disciples into the town of Caesarea Philippi. And by the way, he asked his disciples, saying unto them, Whom do men say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist. Some say Elias, others one of the prophets. And he saith unto them, But whom do ye say that I am? And Peter answereth and saith unto him, Thou art the Christ. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he spake that saying openly, and Peter took him and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned about and looked on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get thee behind me, Satan, for thou savorest not of the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. And whosoever will save his life will lose it. And whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's shall save it. The some shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in glory of his Father with the holy angels. Okay, so quite a bit here. First of all, there's that annoying bit. It always bothers me. Jesus has come to earth to spread a new gospel. He is a new thing, new teachings. Why he is dressing this up in parables, I do not understand. Why he doesn't want the people to understand what he's saying. He explicitly says that the reason he's talking in parables to crowds is so they won't understand him. And why he doesn't want his disciples to understand him by simply speaking what he means, I do not get. I do not understand that. I know that it's part of a literary, liturgical tradition. We're not getting into those kinds of details in these videos. I'm talking just as a work of literature. This doesn't make sense. The fact that Jesus doesn't want people to know that he's working wonders, maybe we can understand that in context of how inconvenient the huge crowds are. But in private, we're told in private with his disciples, he will not explain to them anything directly. What do the 7 leftover loaves mean? What do the 4 leftover loaves mean? Well, the number of loaves or the number of people. Why is that there at all? Why, when they ask him in private, what is the meaning of this? Since you're completely new, no one's ever seen anything like this before, will you please make yourself plain to us? Not only does he not do that, but he's angry with them for even asking. Same thing with this detail about Peter. For the very first time, one time earlier in this gospel, we've seen Jesus hint that he is going to die an early death. That's happened once so far. But here he says it explicitly. Here he says that the Son of Man will be rebuked of the chief priests and the elders of the temple and put to death by them. This is the first that the disciples have heard of this. And they are amazed. And Peter rebukes him and says, No, what are you talking about? You won't be put to death. We won't allow it. We presume he says something like that. This is insane. You won't be put to death. We won't allow it. You won't allow it. This can't end that way. That is a perfectly human reaction, a perfectly natural reaction. Peter and Jesus rebukes him for it, calls him Satan. Says, you're concerned with the things of this world. In reading this just as a work of fiction, it's hard not to imagine that the character of Jesus would have been equally upset if his disciples had not objected to the idea that he would be killed. You don't value me? You're just taking this in your stride? But either way, it adds an extra level of drama as this gospel proceeds. We've already had 2 elements of superseding drama worked in. One was that first mention of Jesus that he might not live long. You won't have me around forever. Now he's made it explicit. Not only when he'll die, but who will kill him. And that fits with the other element of the drama that we've seen, which is that Mark has explicitly told us that the Pharisees and the scribes hate Jesus. The Herodians hate Jesus. They are working against him. They're working to destroy him. So those elements are adding to this whole thing. One of you pointed out earlier on that another element that's goosing the drama here is the very obduracy of the disciples. They don't understand anything that he does, and they don't seem always to agree with him. They're not always sympathetic with him. There's definitely a perceptible note of antagonism between teacher and students. And that ends chapter 8. We didn't get much here except cryptic references to math from a being who presumably could not only explain himself, but also make the explanation unfold in the minds of listeners. Instead, in Mark, we get a limited figure. A figure that the limits are going to get more and more broad with each successive gospel, but here it's a limited figure. Why does Jesus need to take this blind man out of the city? Why does he need to try twice? Or use any kind of tools or spit or his fingers or anything? Why does he need to do any of that? This Jesus clearly does need to do that. Later Jesus, other gospel Jesus probably won't. And certainly the Jesus of popular imagination doesn't need to do those things. In this gospel, Jesus not only needs to lay hands on, use spittle, use mud, whatever, but also it doesn't work the first time. It's not complete. The man doesn't get his whole vision yet. He sees trees walking. And we get wonder working. So that's another element of this chapter, is that we get wonder working. So that is chapter 8. We will move on next time to chapter 9 as we get closer and closer. Keep in mind, Mark is a very short gospel. This story is going to start to gather real momentum real soon. So I'll wrap this up for now. We'll return to it next time. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.